Have you ever wondered what it means to live in a place where your own breath becomes something you must survive? Where the air at -71 degrees Celsius does not sustain you, but tears into your lungs like shattered glass, not as a rare catastrophe, but as an ordinary morning, repeated endlessly across seasons that offer no reprieve. This is not a world record to marvel at from a distance. This is the texture of daily existence in Yakutia, a frozen empire stretching across northeastern Siberia, where death does not wait at the end of a road, but hides within every breath, every object touched, every second of hesitation, where alpha wolves, broken by starvation, drift toward human settlements, not out of boldness, but out of desperation, and where permafrost, more than half a mile deep, holds the bones of 40,000-year-old mammoths and the bodies of gulag prisoners beneath the same roads that carry traffic today, as though the land itself keeps a record no one chose to write. Beneath this frozen empire lies one inescapable truth, not a conclusion, but a condition, that survival here has never meant conquering the cold, but rather reinventing, generation after generation, what it means to be human within it. Welcome to a place that should not exist, yet does. Against every logic the modern world relies upon. This is unreal Yakutia. Humans arrived in Yakutia during the Ice Age not as conquerors, but as followers. They tracked mammoth herds across land bridges that have since vanished beneath rising seas, settling into a landscape that offered no comfort, only endurance. For millennia, they stayed. They read the frozen terrain the way sailors read the ocean, by instinct, by season, by the quiet, accumulated intelligence of survival passed from parent to child across generations without interruption. In the 13th century, the succor arrived from the southern steppes, horsemen carrying a culture shaped by open grasslands and warm winds. They did not conquer Yakutia. They translated themselves into it. Steppe traditions did not disappear. They transformed. Horse herding became something entirely new here, not a practice of abundance, but a slow, patient negotiation with a land that offered nothing freely. Russian conquest came in 1632, but the empire's grip on this territory was always thinner than its maps suggested. The land resisted longer than any people could. The true reckoning arrived in the 1930s, under Stalin, when Gulag prisoners were forced to build the Kolyma Highway, more than 1,243 miles of road, carved through some of the coldest ground on Earth. constructed at -60 degrees Celsius, with no heavy machinery, only human hands and a timeline that did not account for survival. Workers died by the thousands. The permafrost was too hard to dig graves. So the bodies were laid into the foundation of the road itself, frozen solid, covered over and driven upon for decades afterward. The highway proves something brutal and inescapable. You can force infrastructure onto this land, but you cannot force the land to accept it. After 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed and its industrial methods with it, indigenous peoples began reclaiming what had always worked. Even reindeer herders, who had sustained themselves here for tens of thousands of years, carried knowledge that Soviet collective farms, built and abandoned within 50 years, never possessed. Today, Yakutians carry all three layers of their history simultaneously: the ancient wisdom of the Ivan and Evenki, the industrial engineering of Soviet-era cities, and the restless, daily adaptation demanded by a new and unexpected threat, the slow, irreversible thaw of the permafrost beneath everything they have built. -71 degrees Celsius is not an anomaly. It is not a headline. It is the baseline, the ordinary, expected condition against which life in Yakutia measures itself. Verkhoyansk holds the record for the widest temperature swing on Earth, 105.8 degrees Celsius in a single year, from brutal, lung-shredding cold to startling summer warmth. But it is the cold that shapes everything, and its effects are not merely uncomfortable. They are architectural. At these temperatures, metal freezes to skin in 3 seconds. Moisture, in a single breath, crystallizes before it fully leaves your mouth, falling to the ground as a fine, silent dust of ice. Eyelashes seal shut. A smile, attempted through layers of frost-covered fabric, cracks the moisture across your face into a web of white. Rubber shatters like glass. Steel becomes brittle and splits under pressure without warning. Gasoline thickens into something closer to gel than fuel. Even sound behaves differently. Words spoken in open air fall to the ground before they reach the listener, swallowed by a stillness so total it feels less like silence and more like a physical weight. Your body, in this environment, becomes its own enemy. Breathing unfiltered air through an open mouth does not just burn the throat, it damages the tissue of the lungs. Exposed skin begins to die within 90 seconds. Sweat, which in temperate climates cools and regulates, here becomes a death sentence. Moisture freezes against the body, locking heat inside for only a moment before draining it entirely from the core. The cold does not kill loudly or dramatically. It kills quietly, patiently, with a precision that leaves no room for error and no margin for hesitation. Step outside at dawn in January. The air is so cold it glitters ice crystals, suspended in a stillness so complete it feels like breathing inside a piece of glass. The first breath burns, yes. But the second breath teaches you something: the rhythm. Shallow. Nasal. Filtered through a scarf wound tight against your face, warmed by your own body before it reaches your lungs. The sun rises late around 10 inches the morning, barely clears the horizon, and sets again by 2 inches the afternoon. In those 4 hours, the world turns gold and blue. Shadows stretch for miles across untouched snow, casting the landscape in a quality of light that exists nowhere else on Earth. There is no noise. No wind. Only the slow, distant creak of frozen trees adjusting to the weight of ice they carry. This is not a place that invites casual visitors. But for those who learn its language, who understand that the cold is not something to be defeated, but something to be read, it becomes a companion, not an executioner. A presence. A rhythm. Something you move with, not against. Because physics is merciless here, everything humans wear, eat, or build must function as a piece of survival infrastructure. Clothing is not fashion, it is insulation technology. Food is not cuisine, it is metabolic fuel. Architecture is not design. It is a negotiation with ground that refuses to stay still. Every object in a Yakutian life has been shaped over generations to answer one question: how do we continue? Yakutsk did not grow upward because its architects dreamed of height. It grew upward because the ground demanded it. The entire city, home to roughly 350,000 people, is raised on concrete stilts, lifted off the permafrost like a metropolis balanced on the tips of its fingers. The permafrost beneath cannot be disturbed. If warmth from a heated foundation penetrates the ground below, the ice melts, the earth loosens, and the structure above collapses. So the buildings hover. Gas pipelines run above ground through the streets like mechanical veins, carrying heat through exposed metal arteries that hiss and radiate warmth into air that is already trying to freeze them solid. The annual temperature swing in Yakutsk reaches nearly 100 degrees Celsius, from 64.4 degrees Celsius in the depths of winter to plus 40 degrees Celsius in the brief, violent summer. No other city on Earth endures a range like this. And now, as climate change accelerates the thaw of the permafrost beneath, the stilts that once guaranteed stability have begun to shift. Buildings tilt. Foundations crack. The ground that Yakutsk was built to avoid is slowly, quietly arriving. At minus 60 degrees Celsius, factory-made clothing fails. Not gradually. Not uncomfortably. It fails completely. Fabric stiffens, zippers lock, synthetic insulation collapses under its own frozen weight. Only one material retains heat reliably at these temperatures, in motion, through wind: reindeer hide. Even women craft the clothing that keeps their families alive. Reindeer hide is sewn together with sinew thread made from animal tendon, which remains flexible in extreme cold in ways that no manufactured thread can replicate. The boots, called unti, are layered with precision. Hide on the outside, fur on the inside, shaped to trap body heat while allowing the foot to move. Every layer is deliberate. Every stitch is functional. The beadwork sewn onto these garments is not decoration in the way outsiders might assume. It is identity, a visual language that marks family, lineage, and belonging. But it is secondary to the primary purpose. In Yakutia, clothing is not self-expression. It is the difference between walking home and dying halfway there. There is a stillness inside Krestiansky Rynok that does not feel like silence so much as it feels like weight, the kind of quiet that settles into a space where frost has claimed every surface and the air itself moves too slowly to carry sound. This is the central market of Yakutsk, and in the heart of January, when the world outside contracts to a handful of pale hours and the cold makes even the act of walking a negotiation, this is where the city gathers, not loudly, not with urgency, but with the quiet, unhurried rhythm of people who have done this before and will do it again, and understand that the doing of it is itself a form of survival. The fish line, the stalls in rows, so straight they seem almost planted, omul, char, pike, whitefish, each one frozen solid the moment it was pulled from the water, each one standing upright without a single degree of artificial cold to hold it in place. No freezer. No ice. The winter itself is the only preservation this market has ever required, and it has never once failed to deliver. There is something quietly astonishing about this. A gallery of food arranged not by design, but by the simple, brutal logic of a landscape that does the work for free, and has done so for longer than anyone here can remember. And then there is stroganina, the dish that makes this market more than a place of transaction. A vendor draws a blade across a single frozen omul, slowly, deliberately, and what lifts off the surface is not quite flesh and not quite ice, but something suspended between the two, thin, translucent curls that catch whatever gray light filters through the stall and hold it for a moment before falling onto the board. Eaten raw, with nothing but salt and black pepper and the sharp, almost mineral bite of the fish itself, stroganina asks nothing of the stove, nothing of the fuel that every family in Yakutsk measures and conserves like breath. Every vitamin stays locked inside. Every gram of fat remains untouched by heat. In a place where energy is spent before it is even earned, this single act of eating becomes something close to genius, not invented, not designed, but discovered, slowly, over generations, by people who could not afford to waste a single calorie on the question of how food should taste. What draws people back to Krestiansky Rynok, though, is not only the fish. It is the standing. The lingering. The way two people can lean against the same stall in the same stillness and exchange a few words, and in that small exchange confirm something neither of them would say aloud, that they are still here, that the winter has not taken them, that the cold outside is survivable, if only because it has always been survived before. In the remote camps of even reindeer herders, sleep is not a continuous block of rest. It is a strategic rotation. A wood-burning stove must be fed every 15 minutes, around the clock without exception. If the fire dies, the temperature inside the dwelling drops fast enough to kill. So families take turns. Someone is always awake. Someone is always feeding the stove. Children learn this rhythm before they learn to read, waking in the dark, adding wood, listening to the creak of frozen air outside, then returning to sleep for another brief interval. It is not insomnia. It is discipline. A pattern so deeply embedded in daily life that it becomes indistinguishable from the rhythm of breathing itself. There is no running water in remote camps. Pipes freeze solid within hours of being filled. Drinking water must be melted from ice, and not just any ice. Snow, which seems like the obvious source, contains trapped air and surface impurities that waste energy to process. Pure ice blocks, found deeper in the forest where conditions are cleaner, are carried back to camp and melted over the stove. The process takes hours. Two or more hours of continuous fuel burn every single day, simply to produce water. Even the most fundamental human need, thirst, becomes a daily engineering problem in Yakutia. There is no shortcut. There is no convenience. There is only the stove, the ice, the time, and the patience to wait. But individual adaptation, no matter how refined, is not enough. One person can melt ice. One person can sew reindeer hide. One person can tend a stove through the night. But roads, schools, and cities require collective effort, collective decisions, collective risk. And when the environment punishes mistakes at the societal level, the cost is not measured in discomfort. It is measured in lives. The Kolyma Highway stretches more than 1,243 miles through the taiga of northeastern Siberia, one of the longest and most brutal roads ever built by human hands. It was constructed entirely by prisoners of Stalin's Gulag system during the 1930s, at temperatures that regularly dropped to -60 degrees Celsius. There was no heavy machinery. There were no machines at all in many stretches. Only human beings, forced to move frozen earth with picks and shovels, one layer at a time, in darkness that lasted for months. Workers died by the thousands. The permafrost was too hard to dig graves. So the bodies were laid into the road itself, packed into the foundation, frozen solid and covered over. The road was built on top of them. It still exists today, still carrying traffic over ground that holds the remains of the people who made it possible. The Kolyma Highway is not just infrastructure. It is a warning embedded in the landscape itself. When a society tries to impose its will on an environment that fundamentally rejects it, the cost is not abstract. It is not a statistic. It is bones pressed into the earth beneath your wheels every time you drive. Yakutsk is the largest city in the world, built entirely on continuous permafrost. Its 350,000 residents do not live in spite of the cold. They live within it, shaped by it, organized around it, constantly renegotiating their relationship with ground that has never truly been stable. Walk through the city center in winter. Gas pipelines snake above the streets like metallic arteries hissing with heat. Beneath your feet, the permafrost remains frozen barely. Inside the buildings on stilts, life happens in full. Cafes serve stroganina alongside imported coffee. The Comus Museum archives more than 2,000 jaw harps collected from across the Arctic. Theaters stage productions in the Saka language, performing Olonko epics that have been passed down orally for centuries. Tech startups experiment with remote work infrastructure because if anyone in the world understands how to build systems that function under isolation, it is the people of Yakutsk. The rhythm of modern life here follows the seasons with an almost physical precision. Winter is indoor existence. Schools, offices, cultural centers become the entire world. Summer, when the sun barely sets, the city exhales. Outdoor markets open, the Wyzyak festival draws crowds, and barbecues burn late into nights lit by midnight sun. The irony is quiet but real. Yakutsk has faster internet than many rural towns in Western Europe, because isolation demanded technological leapfrogging long before the rest of the world thought to catch up. Even after 400 years of Russian settlement, humans have not conquered Yakutia. They have only negotiated a fragile truce. But within that truce, they have built a functioning city where people go to work, raise children, create art, and argue about politics, just like anywhere else on Earth. The difference is that they do it on ground that could collapse beneath them at any moment. From the air, Mir looks like a wound in the earth, a perfect geometric hole carved into the frozen landscape with a precision that seems almost violent in its contrast to the wilderness surrounding it. The open pit is more than a third of a mile deep and nearly 0.8 miles across, excavated entirely from permafrost to extract kimberlite, the rock that contains diamonds. The air currents inside the pit are so powerful and so unpredictable that helicopters are banned from flying directly above it. The vortexes created by the shape of the hole and the temperature differentials between the frozen walls and the open air can pull aircraft downward with enough force to be fatal. At its peak, Mir produced roughly 20% of the world's gem-quality diamonds. Russia's largest diamond ever found, 342 carats, was pulled from this single hole in the ground. The mine represents something essential about humanity's relationship with Yakutia. We can tear a hole more than a third of a mile deep into frozen earth. We can extract extraordinary value from it. But we cannot make that earth habitable. The mine sits in a landscape that remains, after all the extraction, fundamentally hostile to permanent human presence. In the open fields outside Yakutsk, as June light stretches past midnight and the air finally loses its edge, thousands gather in traditional dress, silk robes, embroidered with patterns older than written memory, silver jewelry that catches the low sun, fur-trimmed boots that have walked through winters no thermometer could fully describe. The drumming begins. The circle forms. And for a single day, the isolation that defines life here dissolves into something collective, something older than the Soviet state that tried to suppress it, older than the Russian Empire that claimed this land, older even than the permafrost beneath their feet. After 6 months of darkness and cold, humans need proof they are still alive. Yakutsk provides it. Held at the summer solstice, when the sun finally returns and refuses to set, Yakutsk is not a celebration of abundance. It is a celebration of survival, a ritual confirmation that the community made it through another winter. Horse racing proves that the herd survived. Traditional costumes, worn with elaborate beadwork unique to each family, declare in visual language, "We are still here." Kumis fermented mare's milk is shared in a circle, a single source drunk communally, a statement of unity made liquid and passed from hand to hand. But beneath the festivities, something quieter is happening. Yakutsk forces people out of isolation. Through winter, families are scattered each in their own yurt, their own camp, surviving alone. The festival gathers them. And in gathering them, it forces a ritual that no one speaks aloud, Counting. Counting how many returned. How many children were born? How many elders made it through? Not everyone who entered winter came out. Everyone in the crowd knows this. But in Yakutia, grief is not performed publicly. It is carried privately. Isyach is not a memorial. But it functions as one, a space where the absence of certain faces says everything that words cannot. Because in Yakutia, grief is private. But survival is communal. Communal survival depends on gathering. It depends on counting. It depends on the ability to reach each other at all. That ability depends on a landscape. The landscape dictates when people can move and when they cannot. Nowhere does that dictation feel more absolute than where Yakutia meets the sea. Where the Lena River meets the Laptev Sea, it does not end so much as dissolve, splintering into a labyrinth of more than 1,500 islands, channels, and sandbars that shift with every season and every tide, creating a geography so unstable that maps drawn in summer become obsolete by winter, and boundaries marked on paper bear little resemblance to the territory they claim to represent. The Lena Delta stretches across roughly 11,000 square miles of Arctic coastline, a landscape so flat and fluid that the boundary between land and water exists more as an idea than a fixed line, where what appears solid in one month may be open water in the next, and where the very concept of shore becomes something provisional, negotiated daily between ice and current, and the slow retreat of permafrost that holds the entire structure in place. In summer, when the ice retreats and the channels open, the delta becomes a staging ground for migratory birds numbering in the millions, their calls filling the air above a wetland system that functions as one of the Arctic's most critical breeding grounds, a temporary abundance made possible only by the brief window when the land stops being frozen and becomes, for a few short weeks, almost hospitable. In winter, everything freezes, and the structure locks into a silence so complete it feels geological, as if the delta itself has stopped breathing, as if the distinction between river and sea and tundra no longer matters, because all of it has become the same thing: ice, unbroken, and absolute, extending in every direction without variation or end. The people who navigate this delta do not think of it as a barrier, something to be crossed or overcome, but as a calendar, a living schedule written in ice thickness and water temperature, and the behavior of animals who know, long before any human measurement, when the shift is coming. Fishermen here read the ice the way sailors read the wind, not as an obstacle, but as information, a set of conditions that must be understood before they can be used. Because the difference between reading the ice correctly and reading it wrong is not inconvenience, but survival. And that knowledge, accumulated over generations, is what allows life to continue in a place where the margin for error has never been anything but narrow. The rhythm of the delta is governed by the Lena itself, one of the longest rivers in the world at over 2,700 miles, and its seasonal pulse, the freezing, the thaw, the flood. The retreat dictates not only when travel is possible and when the land simply closes, but also when fishing can happen, when supplies can be moved, when families can visit each other, when the entire social structure of the region can function at all. This is a place where the coastline retreats a little further each year, as permafrost erodes beneath it, where islands that existed a generation ago have vanished entirely, and where people have learned, through necessity rather than philosophy, that permanence is not a condition they can afford to assume, because the ground beneath them has never promised to stay still, and the ice that holds their world together melts a little more with every passing summer. Yakutia is a place that, by any modern measure of stability and control, should not exist at all, sustained not on certainty but on a practice older than recorded history, a long and unbroken discipline of acceptance, adaptation, and rebuilding after each collapse, woven so deeply into its people that it has become less a strategy of survival and more a way of understanding the world itself. As climate pressure redraws the boundaries of habitability and pushes societies toward futures defined by instability rather than comfort, Yakutia stops feeling like a distant anomaly and becomes instead a mirror, a living preview of the questions humanity is only beginning to confront, and a quiet reminder that this story does not belong to one frozen land alone, because across the world, other places shaped by the same restless forces are already there, already enduring, already teaching what it means to keep building when the ground beneath you refuses to hold.